Hi, this is Autumn Blake with the Blake Report. Today is March 26th, 2014, and due to Israel closing all of their embassies and consulates worldwide, this report is on some of the suspicious activities and actions by Israel that may indicate impending military escalation or some other type of international conflict that is coming up in the future based on recent events that have revolved or included Israel. So we've probably all seen that Israel has closed their embassies and consulates worldwide. And the official story is that this was done because of a foreign ministry employee strike over pay, wages, and other benefits and working conditions. Now, this could be true. There has been an ongoing issue since over the last year or two. And on March 5th, communications have broken down, negotiations have broken down. However, this could also be a cover story, and this is a very important detail to focus on. And I think in order to figure out if this is, in fact, a cover story by Israel to have a reason to close down their embassies and consulates worldwide, it's important to look at what has been going on in the recent past. And if Israel knew of an upcoming policy announcement or a military involvement that they were going to be involved in, or had intelligence that was coming soon, that was going to put their foreign diplomats at risk, they certainly would need to close their embassies and send their diplomats back home. And this could be a good cover story for that. Now, still, it could be just a strike, and I think it's important to look at recent issues that have come up over the last couple of weeks to see what is going on and to determine or analyze. So we're into the third day of the strike now, on March 26th. Actually, the fourth day. The strike officially started on Sunday. It's interesting to note that Hartz is reporting, a couple other news outlets are reporting how unaffected and indifferent a lot of the Israeli government is about this. You would think that a government such as Israel would be a little bit more worried and would have prevented the strike from happening, given how important their diplomacy is. So this is another interesting fact to point out that leads to it possibly being a cover story to close their embassies. This strike has prompted Netanyahu to even cancel a diplomacy trip to Latin America. This would have been the first time ever a sitting prime minister from Israel would have gone to South America. Also, the Pope is canceling his trip to Israel. So it's very questionable. Not only are the consulates and embassies closed and potentially high-ranking diplomats being sent back to Israel, but also we have the issue of the prime minister even canceling trips that are so far in advance for next month based on the strike. Now, the most advanced Gaza-Israeli tunnel was found last week. So if we look leading up to this, the different things that have happened is important to analyze to see, is there a story being built? Can we see something that is coming up either internationally or regionally in the Middle East, or something that Israel knows that they're going to offensively engage in? So this has been a justification, this tunnel, for Israel to strike the Gaza Strip. It's Hamas claimed that this tunnel wasn't a big intelligence feat, and that the tunnel was unsuitable for use. But Israel is claiming that this was a big deal and that they had to react based on this tunnel, and that this poses a huge national security threat for Israel. So we also have a couple of other things that happened in the last several weeks. Israeli defense minister publicly stated that Israel can no longer rely on the U.S. to handle the Iranian nuclear crisis. And on some level, this insinuates that Israel will come up with a solution on their own, saying that they can't rely on the U.S. And let's be honest, when it comes to Israel, the solution would not be diplomatically. Diplomacy would not be engaged. It would be some type of military action. The extent to Iran's nuclear buildup is really unclear, and there are some people who question if the crisis is overblown by Israel as a justification for eventual action. The Israeli defense minister goes on to say that the U.S. is showing weakness throughout the world. He said, quote, "We have to behave as though we have nobody to look out for us but ourselves." And the U.S. Has long been Israel's primary champion throughout the world, funding, giving them a financial aid, helping to fund their military, doing their diplomatic bidding. And with the unpredictability of Israel's foreign policy and military actions, it should be a cause for concern that if Israel feels isolated like this and they're starting to propagate this type of language publicly and internationally, that they may start lashing out and doing things that are not condoned or recommended by other international organizations or by the U.S. for that matter. And this comes shortly after Kerry had remarked at the German Munich Security Conference that the status quo of Israel will not be maintained if a peace deal is not agreed on by Israel. And this was a huge thing. Israel totally freaked out by this. And it was a big thing for Kerry and the Obama administration to say. And basically it kind of put Israel on the spot, saying that basically saying that boycotts or other types of sanctions could happen if they are not negotiating and compromising with the peace deal. And of course, Kerry was slammed by Israel for encouraging this supposed boycott. So there's definitely this backlash by Israel. And this further demonstrates this quasi-isolationist stance that Israel is taking, which most people that are looking at and analyzing what could be coming up with Israel sees this as a big red flag, and it is a red flag. So this is leading up to them even closing their embassies, and this is quite concerning. Of course, Netanyahu says that this idea of a boycott is unjustified and amoral, and the Israeli deputy transportation minister had further commended Netanyahu's hardline stance against Kerry and the Obama administration. He stated, quote, "Obama and Kerry are actively and unilaterally and only putting pressure on Israel. The Palestinian Authority president is calmly maintaining his positions, while Israel is being told to make painful concessions that endanger it and its citizens. That is not how negotiations should be ran." So this is what they're saying. This is the type of rhetoric that's coming out of Israel right now. And regardless of whether or not it's justified or unjustified, or what the reality of it is, the bottom line is that this is the language that Israel right now in the last couple of weeks has been putting out there. And so it starts to build a picture. I mean, doesn't this sound like a government that's ready to lash out due to international pressures and creating kind of an isolationist stance for itself? So we have a couple of other things that have gone on in the recent past with Israel. The Israeli defense minister came out and started slamming Washington and Obama's foreign policies. Look, there may be some truth to that, but the bottom line is Israel didn't do this for any kind of truth. Israel did this because it wants to provoke the U.S. into having a hardline, war-hungry type of foreign policy, because Israel long knows that they want the U.S. to do its bidding. They want the U.S. to start wars on behalf of Israel, essentially, and fight wars and keep the Middle East, quote unquote, Israeli safe or Israeli friendly, which basically means that Israel can maintain a status quo of not being threatened or not having to go to war itself and just be able to engage in small airstrikes throughout the region. And of course, Kerry was upset about the defense minister's remarks. So we're seeing this story start to emerge in the last few weeks of how Israel is reacting and how the U.S. is reacting. There seems to be, for the first time in a long time, a possible separation of foreign policy and ideology between the U.S. and Israel. And I don't necessarily think that this is a bad thing. But the opinion of whether it's good or bad or positive or negative is irrelevant. The bottom line is that this is happening for an agenda on both ends, and this is leading somewhere. And I would pose the question, or I would pose to say that the whole embassy thing is definitely a sign that that there is an agenda at play and that something is going to happen. What that something is yet to be seen, and it could involve Israel and Iran. Or a couple of weeks ago, we saw that Gaza militants had fired large rockets at Israel. Some people are questioning whether or not this is or was a legitimate Hamas or insurgent attack. It's very interesting to note that there were 40 rockets that were hurled at Israel. Only 3 of them were caught by Israel's Iron Dome. The other 37 hit Israel in unoccupied lands. It didn't injure or hurt anybody. So it is kind of questionable. Some people have questioned whether or not this is a false flag on behalf of Israel to justify some further action or to stop negotiations in Palestine. And all of this comes on the eve of the missing airliner that Israel maintained throughout the course, that this had Iran's fingerprints all over it. So much so that they got their air force on standby and had Israeli citizens start to plan and clear out their bomb shelters. Now, it's uncertain as to whether or not Israel is just overreacting and trying to make some big international statement about how vulnerable they are, or if they had some real intelligence on the plane. But I will say that now we're being told that the plane, of course, as many of us have probably already heard, that the plane has been said to have ended up in the Indian Ocean. And there is absolutely no hard evidence that says that this is true. We have no parts of the plane, no bodies. For weeks, the satellite imagery did not come forward. And then all of a sudden we have this British intelligence agency, company, come forward with the satellite imagery. The imagery hasn't been released to the Chinese government. They've been demanding it. The imagery has not been released to people, to the public. So I think that there's a big sense of, is this truly what happened with this plane? So I think we have to keep an eye on Israel and what's going on in the future with Israel in the next couple of weeks to try to come up with an analysis of if we're going to see some type of action. But the fact that Israel has closed their embassies and their consulates, and this all led up in the last couple of weeks with a lot of international and foreign policy debate, a change in U.S. foreign policy and rhetoric towards Israel, Israel's sense of isolationism, and so on should be cause for concern and something to look at. All right, until next time, this is Autumn Blake with The Blake Report.